Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr, and here in an increasingly amount of times with Kevin Noon as well. First, Tom, how's it going?
Tony, happy to be here. Happy to have a. I think I like these Friday afternoon live shows. I think we did one last week, and it was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun, and this is a good time of week to do it because everyone who's at work is kind of like, yeah, they're kind of checking out right now, but not us, Tony. We're still hard at work.
Mm, I might disagree with you there. Kevin, how's it going?
I'm doing great. We talked about doing the show a little earlier, and I was sitting in the drive-through lane at Chipotle and get this message. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. We're going to have to wait. This brisket's too good. I had to sit there. I mean, it's a limited time only. I need this to get me to November 1st to the McRib because I hate myself, so I eat like garbage. So I'm just taking myself down from a processed food standpoint.
Fine would
Can
have
we back up?
sufficed.
Can we back up to a Chipotle with a drive-through? I don't think I've ever seen a Chipotle with a drive-through.
Well, it's called the Chipotle Lane, and you order online through the app, and then they give you a time to go pick it up. So
Hmm.
it's not great, but it's better than the Taco Bell that's 300 yards away.
I always order my Chipotle to go. Like I order it on the app ahead of time. I don't standing in line. That is so pre-pandemic for me. I am never doing it again in anything. Even the BMV. I got the new license a couple of months ago. Checked in online. Got there as soon as they opened. Really long line of people, and I was going. Walked by each one of them and walked right in. Boom. It's the way to be. It's. I'm never going back.
Yeah, the online check-in is incredible. It's like I I think I just had a good experience at the DMV. Like, what is going on? Now that does not include the time before that we had paid off my wife's car, so it was like, all right, well, we'll go to the DMV and get our title done. So we checked in online, and then they were running a little behind, so we stood there for 20 minutes, and then we got up to the counter, and then they're like, oh, no, you just have to go to the title office. You don't have to do that here. And you walk to the title office, and there's no line, like nothing. So I was like, all right, well, lesson learned for next time, I guess. But yeah, even when you do check in online, you do actually have to read the fine print on what you can actually do in various places. That's an important part of the process.
And of course, offer not valid at airports.
Oh, for sure. No, no.
So here we are. It's our Friday show talking about the upcoming weekend of college football. We'll run through the best games. We'll take some questions as they come in, talk about, I'm sure, some Ohio State football stuff. Pretty quiet week on the Ohio State front with the Buckeyes off this week. I don't know. Is there anything to clear up? Injury issues. Ryan Day said this week that Mayan Williams will be back in practice and should be playing next week. Haskell Garrett, they're watching to make sure he's okay. And just seeing him after the game, again, he had no boot on or anything on his foot. He seemed okay-ish, and that a week off would help. Cam Brown should be back. Looked like he just got banged in the head. So I think they may be as healthy as they've been all year once they take the field on next Saturday in Bloomington. Would you agree, Tom?
Well, I mean, with the way injuries have just sort of randomly popped up out of nowhere this year, I'm a little hesitant to be like, oh, yeah, no, okay on all the fronts. But, there's nothing. They have not had a season ending injury that we're aware of since Josh Proctor. I mean, it has been a while. And the guys who have been kind of like day to day or game time decisions, like Tyreek Smith, for example, I have no indication that he's been hurt again since then. So you should be getting Tyreek Smith back. Hopefully the Haskell Garrett thing is really not as serious. It sounds like it's not as serious as it might have initially looked. The Cam Brown thing sounds like, Cam Brown and Mayan Williams may be dealing with sort of similar issues. And, if those are just kind of like, yeah, you need a little time. Well, they just had a week off. So that should help with both of those. So yeah, you should be coming out of your off week about as healthy as you can reasonably expect to be. Like, you're never going to be 100%. You're never going to be in fantastic shape middle of the football season. That just doesn't happen. That's not how football works, as it turns out. But you should be in pretty good shape coming out of the off week. And I think so far all indications are the Buckeyes are going to be about as good as they could possibly be heading into Indiana.
Yeah, and as long as C.J. Stroud and Travion Henderson are healthy, Kevin, nothing can go wrong.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as long as that's the case, I mean, let's just run with it and just, why even play the game? Why even play the game? We should just, if they're healthy, it should just be, they should just push through. But we saw what a non-healthy CJ Stroud was like. I mean, high passes and short hops, and it just, I still have conversations with people who are like, well, what did you really think about the shoulder injury? I'm like, well, it seemed to be real to me. I mean, because he looks like a different guy. And then, of course, we can go round and round about the situation of where, who they're playing and where all that stands. And I went through a lot of that in terms of tail of the tape. I did a two-part series this week where I did one part on offense and one part on defense, looking toward what Ohio State's done through the first 6 games and looking ahead to their opponents, and more importantly, opponents of opponents. So you could sit there and say, well, Michigan State's done this, but you could make the argument of, well, is the best team that Michigan State has played is that Nebraska? Miami, Florida? I mean, so there certainly are some questions in terms of that, but yeah, I think if Stroud and Henderson are healthy, let's go. Or as the kids say, #LFG.
Let's talk about some of the games this weekend, because I do eventually want to get to this Michigan State thing, because I have a feeling my heart is going to be broken by Sparty this weekend. But the first big game I want to talk about, and it's not really a big game, it's just a game that we need to mention, and that's Cal at Oregon tonight, 10:30 p.m. on ESPN. Oregon's favored by 2 touchdowns. I'm only mentioning this game because if you're aware of it, tune in. You might want to root for Oregon to lose this game, just so there's no confusion with the committee about Oregon being the ceiling for Ohio State. And granted, Cal is 1-4 on the season. No, they haven't beaten any FBS teams, but they've all been pretty close losses, except for the last one, which was like 13 points to Washington State, which is still, not terrible. Am I expecting an upset? No, but Tom is.
Tony does not speak for me, and you should never let Tony speak for you. In fact, that is actually maybe the biggest takeaway from this podcast is you should never let Tony speak for you, because sometimes he'll say things which you don't think.
Like,
I don't
where's
think,
the ketchup?
Yeah, I don't think Oregon is in fantastic shape, and I don't think Oregon is going to make it through to the postseason unbeaten. But Cal is pretty bad this year, and I think I'm willing to chalk up at least some of the defeat against Stanford to the fact that Joe Moorhead was rushed to the hospital earlier in the day. Like, that's going to kind of throw off your whole thing. And then you get a new guy calling plays who hasn't really done it before. And so I think I'm willing to chalk up a little bit to that. But, Oregon is not fantastic, but Cal is extremely not fantastic. So this is probably not one that Ohio State needs Oregon probably to lose one more game, or at least be helpful for Oregon to lose one more game for the Buckeyes. I don't think this is the weekend it's going to happen.
I've said since Ohio State lost in that game that Oregon doesn't necessarily need to lose for Ohio State to make the playoffs in front of Oregon. Now they will need to win the remaining games in different fashions. Oregon can't look like Ohio State is looking right now for the rest of the season, and Ohio State can't look like Oregon is looking for the rest of the season. But if Oregon is winning their games in an ugly fashion and Ohio State isn't, they're going to distance themselves, in my mind, and we've already seen that with the AP poll and the coaches poll. Granted, many people who vote on those polls are idiots, but is that any different than the committee, Kevin?
I'm sorry, I was just learning that ketchup prevents scurvy, so
yeah,
that's one of those things. As the producer of the show, I get to see all of the comments. But
I'm gonna look up the vitamin C content in ketchup while you're talking.
Well, I don't have scurvy.
Well, there
Do you guys
go.
have scurvy?
I mean, I guess that makes it true then. I mean, if you like ketchup, but I don't really care for ketchup, and I don't have scurvy. So
also, this television remote keeps tigers away.
Ketchup is high in vitamin C, and Tony, I'd like to buy your television remote.
Well, all right. What was the question again? Something about the committee and blah blah.
The committee has, in the past, we have seen that head-to-head doesn't really matter, and sometimes it does. But the fact that sometimes it does and sometimes it does tells me it doesn't unless they want it to. I think the way things are going between these two teams right now, Oregon's going to have to pick up the pace for the head-to-head to matter. If they both get to 11-1, 12-1, like Oregon is going to need to look better than they have for I think that to really play in with the committee. Do you think Ohio State needs Oregon to have another loss?
Well, I think that Oregon is a declining commodity right now with the loss of C.J. Verdell and just the manner of they're not exactly impressing people with their play. They play on the West Coast. Nobody watches those games except for those of us who really do this for a living, or people that just get stuck at an airport where the game's on in the terminal or whatnot. But nobody's really watching all that. So I think it's important for Oregon to come out there, and they even when it comes head to head with Ohio State and they have the win, I don't know if the committee is necessarily that was week 2. That was a different world. While Ohio State wasn't necessarily that banged up at that point, I mean, and truthfully, Oregon was more banged up with the loss of Kayvon Thibodeau and Noah Sewell, or Justin Flo. I don't even remember now at this point. I think that it's going to be important for Oregon to come out. They need to go and they need to beat these rivalry type of games. They need to do really well against Oregon State. They need to look good, because if you look at where a lot of the pollsters have it, and these, again, we've already said that the human pollsters don't really matter. It's going to be what happens in that room in Grapevine, Texas. But, you have Ohio State on a lot of the ballots already ahead of everybody. So I don't know. I think that Oregon needs to show me something more.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see if they can. We haven't even talked about this. Do we get to the super chats as soon as they come in, or do we hold off, or because we have no rhyme or reason for this show and no order. So I mean, we can take them as soon as they come in, Kevin, or just let's produce this show in front of everybody. How would you like to do this?
I think that super chat gets you to the head of the line, but I think that the bigger the super chat, I mean, if it's big enough, I might just turn off Tony's camera. I mean, why are we
asking the new guy? What do I think? Hey, great question, Tony. Here's what I think. We can do this for questions the whole time.
And I'll turn off Tom's mic. I'll do that for a $1 super chat contribution. Please, I may contribute.
I've seen a bunch of good super chat questions, or a bunch of good questions come through already. I think we can I say we love and respect the listeners and viewers. I don't know what you guys think, but that's what I think.
I'm with you, Tom. So let's talk about what Yakov 22 there. Wake, NC State, Pitt, or BC could still make the college football playoff. Wake is still undefeated. NC State is and 1. BC is technically and 1, but BC and NC State, I believe, played this weekend.
That sounds right. They're in the same division, I think. I say with not as much conviction in my voice as I should have.
Pitt has this crazy offense that I recently discovered like a week and a half ago, because there's been no reason to pay attention to Pitt for years now. And then they come out of nowhere. So the ACC is almost, I don't want to say it's interesting. It's on the verge of getting to the point of starting to look like it could possibly be getting interesting with all of these teams that are meh. But I think it's a lot like the Big Ten West generally, where they're all so even that it's going to be hard for one team to come out of there. And I will readily admit, I still don't know the divisions in the ACC. I'm never going to learn them.
Well, I just said that I think BC and whoever we were just talking about was in the same division. I was wrong. No, they're not. It's just my brain just – I know Miami and Florida State are in different divisions. I know that because the whole point of that was, well, they'll play in the ACC championship game every year. Hasn't happened yet, but every year. And I know Florida State's in the one that Clemson's in. And the Coastal's the one that 7 different teams won it in the span of 7 years. So the Coastal is the one that like Pitt's in, and Duke and Virginia, I think, and a bunch of those teams. Here's the problem with Pitt. Pitt has been phenomenal this year. 51-7 over UMass, 41-34 over Tennessee, 77-7 over New Hampshire, 52-21 over Georgia Tech. Aha, but I skipped one. Western Michigan 44, Pittsburgh 41. Nope, you're out. Bye.
Yeah. The ACC divisions of Coastal and also Coastal. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't. It makes even less sense than Leaders and Legends. I mean, which, I know. I'm a leaders and legends guy myself too, but Coastal and Atlantic just there's no rhyme or reason to it. And when you don't have a dominant Clemson, I don't know if there's any reason to pay attention to that conference until basketball season.
You mentioned Clemson. They play tonight against at Syracuse, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. I go ahead and watch it. I go ahead and see just how bad things have gotten for the Clemson offense with no running game and no passing game and
Terrible
somewhat
line
of a
play.
defense.
Terrible
Yeah,
line
just
play.
the offensive line is horrific. And I guess go watch it and appreciate that that is not Ohio State. And
Mm-hmm.
and then see it like if Clemson loses this one, they'll be what 3-3 on the season. Syracuse, whatever. But that's I mean I will have it on because I haven't. Sometimes you just want to. It's October. What do we do during October? We watch gory stuff. We watch stuff that is like horrific. Just it's like Halloween of football, basically. This one, and so check it out. It won't be for the faint of heart, I'm guessing, but it could still be fun. And again, it's college football, so it's better than anything else going on Friday night.
Well, let's not forget that Syracuse really probably should have beat Wake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a great Syracuse team, but
They're not bad.
they're not bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not bad. I mean, they lost to Rutgers week 2. They beat Ohio University week 1, which Ohio University's been garbage this year. They lost to Rutgers week 2 at home, 17-7. They beat Albany, which who cares? They beat Liberty 24-21, which is like, meh. They had a close loss at Florida State, 33-30, and then overtime at home against Wake Forest. I mean, they're not bad. They're 3-3 right now, and it's like you could tell me that team gets to 7-5 this year, and I'd go, yeah, okay, I can maybe kind of see it. Like this felt going in like this is going to be definitely the last year for Dino Babers, and now it's like no, he's probably bought himself another year at this point.
Yeah. Let's talk about another undefeated team, the Cincinnati Bearcats, the number 3 Bearcats hosting UCF Saturday at noon. Cincinnati is a 21-point favorite. UCF has a couple of close losses, a loss at Navy and a loss at Louisville. Both could have, I think they're by 3 points or 4 points on those. So they are very close to being undefeated and perhaps ranked. I want to ask you guys, because I think we're all going to pick Cincinnati on this one. Is Luke Fickell, Tom, is he the best coach in Cincinnati Bearcats history? And first off, I think the first answer was probably Brian Kelly. And even though
Yeah,
Brian Kelly was 34-6 in his 3 seasons there, like 3 seasons, Luke Fickell now is 40-14. Rick Minter he had a losing record. He was there for a decade, but he had an overall losing record. Do you know what Mark D'Antonio's record was at Cincinnati?
I feel like it was a bunch of like 7-5 years, wasn't it?
It's 18-17 overall. So
Yeah.
Luke Fickell he's not quite the winningest coach of all time, but like Brian Kelly had Cincinnati 12-0 one season. They finished 12-0, finished ranked 4th. And Mark D'Antonio's best season was like a 7-5. Luke Fickell has the team ranked 3rd right now. He's had a couple of like a 3-loss season and maybe a one-loss season. Is he? To me, I think he is the best coach in Cincinnati Bearcats history because he has done something that Brian Kelly didn't do. He got them into the Power 5.
He did. That's true. And Kelly got them to the Sugar Bowl where they got murdered by Florida that one year. But I think what maybe makes it a little more impressive is Kelly got to sort of springboard off of what D'Antonio did. D'Antonio, I just went and looked. It was a 7-5 year, and then a down year, and then a 7-5 year, and then he left. And it was like, if you can get Cincinnati to 7-5, you absolutely deserve a Power 5 job. Like that's how it was when D'Antonio left. And but he at least had started building that program to the point where then Kelly took it to the next level. Fickell took over from Tommy Tuberville, who showed up, flew the plane directly into the side of the mountain. And then Fickell had to kind of like dig it out and start not quite from scratch, but he didn't inherit quite the program that Kelly did. So to me, he has gotten them to a higher level. Plus he's done it from a lower starting point. So to me, yeah, I think that has to be probably more impressive than what Kelly did.
What do you think, Nooner?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that what Luke Fickell has done there has been pretty amazing. And while there have been a lot of coaches that have gone through there and gone on to bigger and better and greener pastures, don't let what they're doing at their new jobs influence the question of what it is that they did at Cincinnati. And I think that what Luke Fickell's done at Cincinnati, there was a point of where we were talking about UCF and Memphis, and those were the only two teams out of the American that were going to be able to compete. And now it's Cincinnati. I mean, that's who we talk about. They're the ones that are the team that could try and be Cinderella at the ball. We're not talking about UCF. We're not talking about Memphis. We're not talking about Tulsa. So, just for that sheer fact, and that it's just not a one off. It's not just 1 year of, oh, they've got a really good quarterback and a couple of other dudes that can play, so it's their turn. I think as long as Luke Fickell is at Cincinnati, I think Cincinnati is going to be in that conversation. Now, I'm not expecting Luke Fickell to be at Cincinnati long term, but then again, they had to really push him out of the nest to get him to leave Ohio State in the assistance role. He gets comfortable at places that he's at, but at some point you need to go make that money.
Well, I mean, he is making $3.5 million a year. He could double that at a USC or triple that at a Texas A&M. There are opportunities out there for him, but he is still pretty young. So you make $3.5 million a year, it'll be $4 million in a couple of years. You're moving to the Big 12. They'll be able to pay him 5 or 6 if he wants to be there. I think that he could stay there long term because he is different than other guys. And this is now you've got maybe it depends on what division, or does the Big 12 not have divisions? Because if you're in the same division with, like, say, like James Franklin probably wants to leave Penn State to get away from Ohio State. There won't be one of those teams in the Big 12. So he could have his cake of being in Ohio and the eating it too of making the playoffs, because there's no one team that is going to stop them every year. So he might find it a lot easier in the Big 12 than being at USC, living that life, dealing with the California recruiting. Like, there's a lot of, you said he's comfortable. He would always get mad at his players for saying they were comfortable, because you're not striving for more. You shouldn't be comfortable. This isn't a comfortable place. Somebody's going to be trying to take your job. Nobody's trying to take his job at Cincinnati, but I think everything he wants to do at USC, or would want to do at USC, I think he can do at Cincinnati. He's already proving that right now. And now, then, when they finally do get to the Big 12, like, he'll definitely be able to do that. So, like, we know he's different. It would be a surprise if he stayed. I think it didn't take, like, the USC job or whatever. I know James Franklin, I've heard, wants the USC job. So, maybe Luke Fickell is a long-term guy because he can do more at Cincinnati than you can in USC, and that it's easier to do it at Cincinnati than it would be in the Pac-12.
I don't understand the idea that Luke Fickell, who has lived in Ohio like literally his whole life, is suddenly going to decide, you know what I'm going to do? Pack up and move to LA, where I don't know anyone, and I don't know any of the high school coaches, and I don't know anything about anything. And it's like, what? Why does that make sense? Like,
but would he go to Penn State then after James Franklin leaves?
well, that was, we talked on Tuesday after the Kerry Combs thing, and that was sort of the scenario I laid out, which was, okay, James Franklin jumps to USC. Then Luke Fickell jumps to Penn State. Luke Fickell jumping to Penn State. Luke Fickell jumping to Ohio State. Luke Fickell jumping to Notre Dame. Like, those make sense to me. You're in your same region. You are where you've lived your whole life. You're not. I mean, the Fickells have. You need, like, scientific notation to express how many children they have. Like, that is a big family. You're uprooting a huge family, moving across the country away from your. Amy's family is I think somewhat local. They might be from Cincinnati, in fact. That is a close-knit family. I don't know that you're moving across the country. I don't think that I could see Notre Dame. I could see Penn State. I could see maybe Ohio State. But if that opens up at some point, USC doesn't make an ounce of sense to me for Fickell. And Bill Green had a fantastic post sort of handicapping where certain coaches might end up. That was on our Ask the Insiders board this week. It was a fantastic, fantastic post with some great insight on a ton of different guys. And he didn't seem to see the Fickell to USC thing really happening either. That has just never rang true for me. And there's, USC is going to have other people who want that job. So there's not going to be a shortage of good candidates. And to your point, like Fickell, he doesn't have to leave Cincinnati. He's making perfectly good money. If he stays another 5 years, they're going to build a statue of him there. And now you have the opportunity to recruit to, hey, now you can come play in the Power Five. Ohio State is no longer the only place in the state of Ohio where you can, be in Ohio and play in the Power Five. Can he start stealing, now that they're in the Power Five, can they start stealing that second tier of Ohio recruits like Kentucky has lived off of for years? Instead of guys going to Michigan State, they're going to Kentucky. Well, maybe instead of going to Kentucky, maybe Luke Fickell can start stealing some of them, especially if Mark Stoops leaves and takes like the LSU job this offseason, for example. So I think there's really no reason for him to leave. Like, if there's a perfect opportunity or a really fantastic opportunity, sure, but moving across the country after not living within 2,000 miles of LA at any point in your life, like, I don't know that is the perfect opportunity.
Tom, did you just suggest Luke Fickell could replace Mark Stoops at Kentucky?
No, I said Luke Fickell could replace. I don't know that you take the Kentucky job. I think Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State are the three that I could see him leaving for. And, who knows what will replace Stoops at Kentucky if Stoops goes to LSU. Although Stoops is kind of in the same boat that Fickell is, where the expectation is not national championship at Kentucky. So I think Stoops' contract, I read this like a year or two ago, but I think his contract essentially automatically adds another year as long as he wins 8 games a year. It's like, can you go 8-4 in the SEC East just in perpetuity? Like, I feel like you kind of can. And, Georgia's good, but South Carolina's garbage, Missouri's garbage, Vanderbilt's garbage, like Tennessee's garbage. Unless Georgia and Florida and Tennessee are all great at some point together, which, has that happened at any point ever, those three? Like, it feels like you could just sort of be the third or fourth best team in the SEC East, go 8-4 every year, and just sort of have your contract roll over in perpetuity.
I think James Franklin turned the Vanderbilt job into the Penn State job and did that in a very bad big SEC East and won a game. And I think they beat Georgia one year. And so you see Mark Stoops doing much better than that in another year, another frame of time where the SEC East is down again. I don't know that you can continue to expect it to be down because the expectations from the inside is we all should be winning. And so I feels like as soon as you can get out of Kentucky and be taking the one job you don't need to leave ever again, like there's maybe, 7 or 8 of those in college football. If that job is open, leave Kentucky and then never look back because he could do 7, 8, 9 wins a year, but he's a Stoops. He wants more than that. I mean, come on. The family his parents were always like, oh, Bobby's our favorite. Bobby's our favorite. And he's never going to be Bobby unless he goes and wins a national championship. And he's not going to do that there in Kentucky.
He's not going to be Mike either, so that's not bad. Being in the middle, being safely. Hummus Hero with a great question: would Luke ever consider taking the Michigan job, or would they consider him? I doubt it, but it's something to think about. I think Michigan would gleefully take Luke Fickell. I don't think Luke Fickell would take Michigan. What do you think?
Would they offer it? Would they even offer it to him unless they knew he would take it, though?
Well, you're not going to offer it, but I think it would not surprise me if they at least had some back channel, like, so would you at least be interested in having a conversation about this kind of things when that job opens up again. I don't think Fickell would do it, and I don't think they're going to like publicly offer him the job and then have publicly get rejected. Like that's not how that works generally. But yeah, I think for sure he's someone who, and they're idiots if they don't reach out to him. Like, he is a great coach. He is, as entrenched in this region as you possibly could be. He knows your recruiting territory as well as anyone does. Like, you'd be an idiot not to, but I don't see that happening.
Kevin,
it's not even a case of it being like, oh, he's a Buckeye, he would never take that job. It's a case of, I think he sees what that program is. I think he sees the amount of work that's there. I think he sees some of the disconnects in terms of the administration with the athletics department and everything else that's going on there, and probably realizes that it's a mess. That it's not necessarily going to be something that's, hey, one good recruiting class and we get this turned around. I think that there's some deep rooted issues there. And if favorite son Jim Harbaugh couldn't come in and get this fixed, how is Luke Fickell going to come in and get it fixed at that point? I mean, as much of a train wreck as Tommy Tuberville was at Cincinnati, we weren't seeing that the foundation of the house was garbage. It was a case of needing to bring some dudes in, fix some things. Certainly, the time I've spent on the Cincinnati campus, it looks like East German gulags. I mean, it's a very industrial looking campus, so they've had to do some, a little sprucing up. But I think that the Michigan fix, if Michigan has to move on from Harbaugh at some point, whether it's into this year, which it doesn't appear that's going to be the case, or 2 years or 4 years, it's a major, it's a total reno. It's a total renovation.
What if we were to see Luke Fickell get offered the job, agree in principle to take the job, and then, like, at his introductory press conference, he gives everybody the crotch chop and said, "I would never work here. What do you, it's like the paperwork isn't always signed by the time that, they still got to dot some I's and cross some T's." So they could do all of this, and then he could publicly say, "No, I would never, not even over my dead body would I coach this Michigan team. You all are embarrassing me. You're embarrassing yourselves." And then he would just walk out.
And then they just play DX's music.
Exactly. I mean, just, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I mean,
but it would be pretty funny if it did. Chris J. Jimenez asked, "Does Franklin bounce midseason if he loses to OSU?" I mean, he's not going to bounce midseason.
Yeah.
I do think there's a better than 50-50 chance he's coaching USC next year, or at least wants to coach USC next year. Because I think he has sort of recognized, like, there is a hard ceiling at Penn State, and that hard ceiling is you might get Ohio State every once in a while if the stars all align. But right now, you're not going to, no matter how well you're recruiting, you're not going to recruit as well as Ohio State does. Plus, Ohio State has a pretty good head start on you at this point. So, there is sort of a hard ceiling where either you have that fluky game where you block a field goal and you block a punt and you beat Ohio State that way, or everything lines up just right, and you just happen to catch them, especially a year when it's in State College and it's the whiteout game. You're not going to win the division. They've only gotten to the Big Ten championship game once the whole time, right? 2016 was the only time they got there. So, that's a long time. They've only made it once, and there's like a real hard obstacle in their way. You go to USC, like, even if USC is not ready right away, like, who in the South is the dominant force in the Pac-12 South? Like, Arizona State?
And that's not going to be much longer.
Utah? I mean, like, there's a lot of Arizona and UCLA out there that, all you have to do is be decent. You can go to the Pac-12 championship game at 9-3, and I mean, Lord knows, USC has done that in the past, and you have that recruiting territory, which is, I mean, premier recruiting territory. You are the big brand. You are the big dog out there. Like that, I completely get why he would want to. He's not leaving midseason. There's no reason to leave midseason, but leaving after the season, I think there's a decent possibility he does.
Yeah, the coaches that are not there midseason are fired. It's not that you're leaving to go, well, I'm just getting out of here because I need to measure drapes. I need to sit there and I need to have some time to start working on my staff. No, you leave mid-season because you're fired. And that's, Clay Helton was fired. That's why he's not at USC. He's not going to turn up somewhere else. So no, it's not a case of that. Penn State's not going to sit there and say, well, we're not elite. We've determined that we're not elite. No matter how much that James Franklin wants to talk about this, we're going to move on, and that's not how it's going to work at this point. Now, you could see a situation where Penn State ends up playing in the Outback Bowl, and SC's ready to make the hire, and Franklin doesn't coach the bowl game because he wants to get started on the recruiting situation. And obviously, under that scenario, Penn State wouldn't be going to Indianapolis, so their season would be over in terms of the regular season at the end of November. So he could bolt at that point, get out in advance of the December signing period, and then of course, obviously, the February signing period. But no, you don't leave mid-season on your own choice unless it's some sort of medical retirement or something along those lines, not to go take another job.
I'm sorry, sir. Did you just say that a team playing in the Outback Bowl, their season was over? May I remind you that coconut shrimp and or a bloomin' onion are on the line depending on who wins that game, sir?
Yeah, and they always stick the Big Ten with coconut shrimp, which is crap. I don't like that. I mean, I understand if you read the fine print, you can get either. But, a lot of people don't read that fine print. But I don't want to be associated with coconut shrimp. That's not how I was brought up. That is not how I was brought up. I don't want it. No. I want my bloomin' onion. Period.
It's a vegetable, so it's healthy.
It really is. It really is. I mean, it's like a superfood.
Can I derail us real quickly? I saw a question earlier about what is Squid Game, which I don't know if you guys know the answer to that.
Yes.
It's a series on Netflix, which is about.
Don't spoil it.
Well, I'm just going to tell people it's about essentially it's sort of Hunger Games. It's basically Hunger Games for people who are deeply in debt and they can try and win a prize, but there's a terrible consequence if they don't win. The reason that people are asking about Squid Game on an Ohio State podcast, do you guys know why people are asking about Squid Game on an Ohio State podcast?
Why?
No.
Javonte Jean-Baptiste, the defensive end out of New Jersey, he has a TikTok account, which he will then put on his Twitter account. And he has had a series of like walking around the locker room and asking guys questions. And one of them was he was asking someone, who would be the best on Squid Game or who'd be the worst on Squid Game, something like that. The last one he did was, which teammate would you not want your sister to date? Which was like, I was like, oh, all right, I'll listen. And it's just him walking up to different people and asking them questions. And Jerron Cage came up a lot there. And the other one was Nick Petit-Frere, which I have to assume is people kidding because Nick Petit-Frere seems like about the nicest kid on the team. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see that. But Javonte Jean-Baptiste, if you are of the TikTok persuasion, you should follow him on there because he seems to be creating some good content. But if you are just on Twitter, you can follow him on Twitter, and he tweets them out there as well.
I was thinking about that yesterday, watching one of those videos. Like, the players are now content creators, and I don't know how I feel about that. You do your job, I'll do my job. Let me do the content. I mean, look at how well we do it. Thank you.
We don't need
Tom,
the competition.
Kevin. Yeah, we don't need it. So let's move to one of the jobs that Luke Fickell has turned down. The Michigan State at Indiana this weekend. Number 10, Michigan State, 6-0 on the season at Indiana, has not gone the way that the Hoosiers wanted. I'm not sure if Jack Tuttle is starting this week. Spartans are favored by 4.5. This is a 12 p.m. game on FS1. My only dream this year, and I've said it everywhere I've been, is for Michigan State to be 7-0. I didn't realize this was a possibility before the season. It's only like in the last couple of weeks where it's like, hey, we could have a 7-0 Michigan State hosting a 7-0 Michigan in 2 weeks. And now that's all I want. You can make that my Thanksgiving present. You can make that my Halloween present. Just combine them all. And just give me that and let me watch that. And let's all enjoy one of the best rivalries in college football with stakes other than crap eating with actual stakes, stakes, as opposed to just bragging rights that, it's been fun. And it's always fun, especially watching Mark D'Antonio enjoy those bragging rights and Mel Tucker as well. But now, like, the winner of that game could be, 6-7 in the polls and probably jumping Ohio State if it's Michigan State. And because I want it so bad and it's so close, it just feels like this is going to be a Sparty no situation.
I just want to know how you're getting Halloween and Thanksgiving presents. Do you get Bastille Day and Arbor Day and Boxing Day presents too?
Yeah, but the thing about Arbor Day, you just get a tree. The thing about Boxing Day, you just get a box. So it's not that great.
And then what do you get for Bastille Day? Bastille tickets?
No, that
What do
doesn't
you
make
get
any
for
sense.
what do you get to get for Guy Fawkes Day? Answer is a keg of gunpowder. Next question.
This Michigan State game could be, I think Ohio State fans are very curious to see what happens there, because Ohio State fans will see Ohio State play Penn State that same weekend and would like to see Ohio State Penn State be the premier game going in that nighttime slot. And I didn't have a chance to watch Tom's podcast yet, where he spoke with a scheduling master, basically, who understands that whole process. But scheduling aside, yeah, it'd be nice to see that game mean something, because a lot of them have just been kind of like, well, here we are, and whether or not it's one team trying to drive a stake into the field somewhere else, or like the flukiest play at the end of the game with like with the botched punt and the guy breaking his leg. I mean, it would be nice to see that game be meaningful, but maybe not too meaningful.
Tom, I want to interrupt you real quick, because Kevin mentioned your interview with Matt Sarziniak, who Tom you just referred to as Matt Sars. Kind of offensive.
Well, I kept the branding consistent with his site. I know. I mean, his name is in the thing, but I don't think he cares what his actual, he uses the abbreviated version of his name. So therefore I called him Matt Sars. I just said from Matt Sars Sports, I believe. So yes, it's Matt Sars, at Matt Sars, SARZ. I had him on the morning scoop this morning, and he was, first of all, fantastic. That's a show that I've wanted to do for quite a while, because I think it's one of those like football minutia things. It seems like, but why would I care? And then every week people are asking questions that are directly answered by, that is the podcast version of the, you're asking a lot of questions about my shirt that are already answered by my shirt. Like, you're asking a lot of questions about this podcast that are already answered by the podcast. It was a lot of, how those schedules actually get made, how they choose what game goes where, who gets to pick first every week, all that kind of stuff. The short version for next week, they have not announced the October 30th games yet. The short version for next week is that basically they will have ABC almost certainly has the first pick. We don't know that for 100% sure, but we're pretty sure ABC, ESPN will have the first pick. We're pretty sure that they will pick Ohio State, Penn State, because Ohio State's a bigger TV draw than Michigan or Michigan State. And so that will mean that ABC will pick it. They will almost certainly put it in prime time. That will probably be the 7:30 ABC game would be the very best guess there, which would leave the Michigan State game for noon on Fox as the big noon Saturday game. The only thing that could possibly derail that is the fact that Iowa and Wisconsin are locked in as a noon game that day. So I think that's due to a homecoming situation, and they are guaranteed to play at noon. So then the question is, will Fox choose for big noon Saturday? Will they choose Michigan State, or will they choose Iowa, Wisconsin? I would think you'd have to go with Michigan State there, but you never know. So that's the short version for October 30th.
But getting back to the game, Michigan State at Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody, Tom, are you going with Indiana here? Because it just feels like at some point Michigan State will turn back into a pumpkin. But I think they have the second best offense in the Big Ten. Now they'll face one of the better defenses, so we'll see how good that offense is. But like Kenneth Walker, the running back, is playing so well that I don't know who's going to stop him at this point. The passing game, Peyton Thorne, the quarterback, we saw their receivers blow up. By the way, did you guys see the tweet from the Detroit Free Press saying, meet the coach of the best wide receiver core in the Big Ten? And for some reason, it was a picture of Michigan State's coach.
This word "best," I do not think it means what you think it means. Like, I mean, that's great. I mean, spunkiest, maybe. Most overachieving, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, that Michigan State feels like they are. It's like, wow, this is. You know what, Mel Tucker? Great job. You're doing a great job. Brought in a bunch of transfers this year. You're way overachieving what everyone thought you were going to do this year. That's fantastic. You beat Indiana, you're 7-0. If you somehow beat Michigan and you're 8-0 and you're state champions for the second year in a row, I mean, that's incredible momentum for the program. that doesn't seem like that Ohio State game is going to go great for them. Like, it really doesn't. I don't think they have the offense to keep up with the Ohio State offense. Like, I don't, they have a good offense, and I think they'll score some points, but are they scoring 35, 40 points against Ohio State? I don't think they are. Are they keeping Ohio State under 35, 40 points? I don't think they are. So that seems like they got a math problem there. So it's a fantastic story. It's a great story. I file them away with Wake Forest, where it's like, it's another team that's like, wow, this team is wildly overachieving expectations. They're not, this is not like a complete fluke. This is actually a pretty decent team. But I mean, as soon as they play a really, really good team, it's going to go poorly for them. And you can kind of see it. I don't think this is the week. I mean, this would be a very, very Michigan State game to lose at Indiana, because this is not a great Indiana team. But this would also be a very Indiana game to get very, very close and then not win either. So, I mean, I think I'm going to roll with the Spartans there, just because I'm not totally bought in on this year's Indiana team. I'm not totally bought in on Michigan State either, but I think you bet on Michigan State just at least winning, not necessarily to cover.
You don't have a term of Spartino without wildly underperforming and not getting, not accomplishing things. But granted, a lot of these Sparty teams that we've seen years past here in the last couple, I don't know how much lower they could have performed because they just weren't very good teams. So, historically, I kind of want to take Indiana in this game just based on history, but Clemsoning was a thing too until it wasn't. And I don't think that Sparty No is going to be put away for 5, 7, 10 years. But I just think that there's too wide of a gap between Indiana 2021 and Michigan State 2021 to have just pure chaos happening in that game. So I'm going to roll with the Spartans to get by in that game. But I think that even as anemic as Indiana is going to show some serious weaknesses in the Spartan armor, and that'll be that. So it'll be a close. I mean, as that Lee Corso guy says, but close or whatever. That I don't know. I don't watch it anymore. I'm too busy having to sit there and get yelled at by Tom to go shoot video of this, that, and the other.
I do like the fact that I don't like this team's history of blowing games that they really shouldn't blow. That's why I have some faith in Indiana. Like, what are you? What? Let me introduce you to Indiana football, like the beginning of time through 1987, 1989 through 2019, 2001 through present. Like, Anthony Thompson is not walking through that door. 2020, Michael Penix is not walking through that door. Like, I have friends who are Indiana grads who it's just like every fall is just like me, just kind of like patting. You remember the "It's Not Your Fault" scene from Good Will Hunting? Oh no, was that Dead Poet Society? I don't remember. Anyway, one of those movies. It was Dead Poet Society. One of those Boston movies.
I believe it was Mork and Mindy.
It's not
Morning,
the it's Mrs. Doubtfire. What? That's not. Yeah, that was that's basically talking to every Indiana fan every football season. It's like, shh, it's not your fault. It's okay. Shh, don't. The football team can't hurt you anymore. It's okay. Like that's Indiana. So yeah, I mean, someone has to not blow this game. That's why I think it's a coin flip that Michigan State is the team that always blows games, and they in fact that will not be the one that blows this game.
Well, let's move to a similar contest. Number 12, Oklahoma State at number 25, Texas. Somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose. Oklahoma State, 5-0, undefeated. National championship hopes still wildly alive. Very confident there in Stillwater. Absolutely. They, however, are a 5-point underdog at Texas. This one is a noon kick on Fox. And, I like what I see from Texas's offense here and there. I don't like what I see from Texas in terms of you're up 28-7 over Oklahoma, and you just let a freshman quarterback go up and down the field on you, and you're powerless to stop it, and you're basically a spectator for the final 2 quarters. But it's not like Oklahoma State is all that good. They're ranked number 12. They're 5-0. That's great. 3-0 in non-conference. They have not really played anybody to this point, and so I think Texas here. I would even pick them maybe to cover, except I would not ever involve any of my gambling money on the Texas Longhorns right now.
Do you know how many times Oklahoma State has scored 30 points this season?
None. One.
31-20 over Kansas State, 23-16 over Missouri State. That's the Bobby Petrino FCS school. 28-23 over Tulsa, 21-20 at Boise State, 31-20 at Kansas State, 24-14 against Baylor. Like this is one of these 5-0 Oklahoma State teams that's going 7-5 and playing in a bowl game on like December 26th. Like you're still going to be pulling, like the ribbons from the stick-on ribbons from Christmas presents. You're going to still be like pulling those off of your furniture by the time you're watching Oklahoma State's bowl game this year. Like that's just no. I mean, I don't really believe in Texas for obvious reasons, but I really don't believe in like Texas has 2 losses right now, and I think Texas finishes with as many or fewer losses as Oklahoma State by the time the season's over.
Yeah, I think that this is the game that I think coming out of that Texas OU game, and they always say don't have one loss become 2. I think that game is in Texas's head. I think you sit there and you look at the roster, Bijan Robinson, some of these other guys. Texas is infinitely more talented than Oklahoma State, but how much is that? If Oklahoma State puts together a nice drive, especially if Texas gets a lead. When do the thoughts start creeping into their heads? It's happening again. I'm just not convinced that. I don't think that this Texas team knows how to win yet. I mean, there's a lot to the mentality of you can win games, but you have to learn how to win. You have to learn how to deal with adversity. I don't think that they're there yet. But this again, I think it's a situation of Texas is so much more talented than Oklahoma State in terms of their roster that it would take seriously like the Hindenburg coming down in the center on the 50-yard line and lighting the whole place on fire for Texas to lose this game. So with me saying that, load up on Oklahoma State, but I'm taking Texas.
So you're saying there's a chance. Oklahoma State has won 3 of the last 5, but Texas has won the last 2. I'm going to assume that's going to be 3 in a row from them. I have the Florida LSU game up next. I don't really care about either of these programs, so we don't really need to talk about that. I would rather just skip that and talk about Nebraska at Minnesota, a much more important game.
The $5 bets of broken chair, yes.
Because you've got Nebraska 3-4, Minnesota 3-2. However, one of those 2 losses is against Bowling Green. So at this point, Buckeye fans, you just need to don't even try to maybe Minnesota can be 10-2 and give Ohio State a quality win. No, they can't. It's even if they went 10-2, it's not a quality win because that loss is so bad. So at this point, just hitch your wagon to the Nebraska Cornhuskers and root for them. They are 4-point favorites in this one. The problem is here, if Nebraska loses this one, Tom, I really like Scott Frost. I think he's the right guy, but they are so 5-16 or 6-15 in 1-score games. That Illinois loss, that's bad, and it should count as 3 losses because it shouldn't happen, and yet the head coach allowed it to happen. Now, all of these crazy things happen around his teams when they shouldn't. Is that Adrian Martinez's fault? Is that Scott Frost's fault? Probably a little bit of both, although you can't really blame Scott Frost. I'm just saying, there's I don't know what the reverse Kavorka that is going on with him and bad juju happening to his teams. If they lose this one, then it at this point there's what hope do you have to become a winning program if you're losing stuff like this? And I don't think one game gets a coach fired, but if you can't win this one and you can't win the Illinois game, that Illinois game seems like it's so long ago, but if you can't win this one, even though it's on the road, the Illinois game it isn't that long ago because it's all just one big smear.
Well, I think a week or so ago, made a long impassioned speech about the fact that you have to give him another year. They are obviously better. They're so obviously better than they were in previous years. Like, it's not even close. They're competitive against teams they haven't been competitive against. I mean, we'll see what it looks like when Ohio State's there, but I suspect it's going to be a relatively close game. It's not going to be a game that's over in the middle of the second quarter like it has been in previous Ohio State visits there. But at the same time, like, if they lose this one, then they're 3-5. They still have Ohio State. They still have Wisconsin. They still have Iowa on the schedule. Like, they have to win the next two games. They have to win the next two games. You have to beat Minnesota. You have to beat Purdue. And then you have to win one of the three. And I think Wisconsin is the easiest of those three right now. But, if you go 5-3, or what would they? No, they'd be 5-5 at that point. You win your next two. You get to 5-5, and you lose to Ohio State, or you lose to Ohio State. They get you to 5-5. You just split the last two. You're 6-6. You've pulled off a win against a team, an upset win against a team in your division. That should be enough to keep him. But you have to win these two. You cannot lose to Minnesota. You cannot lose to Purdue, and you have to steal one of the three at the end. That is, if they lose to Minnesota and that ends up getting him fired, and they finish 5-7 or 4-8, whatever it is, and that ends up getting him fired, that's not the Minnesota game getting him fired. That's not, you can't fire him over one game, as you said. This is not the only game. Like, the Illinois game is a game too. Like, okay, so you're not getting fired for losing this, this one. You're getting fired for losing two games you shouldn't have lost. Minnesota's not great. They should beat Minnesota. Purdue is not great. They should beat Purdue. You should be 5-4 going into that home stretch, and then just get to 6 wins, just get bowl eligible. If they go 6-6, but they beat Iowa at the end of the season, which is totally possible. I think Iowa is beatable at the end of the season. If they do that, then then he absolutely gets another year. But you have to win this game in order to get there. And how confident am I in the fact that, like, yes, they should win this game? How confident am I that they are going to win this game? Like, not a ton. They should, though, but
It's hard to have confidence in them when they've hurt me so bad in the past and let me down. Let's move to perhaps the biggest game of the weekend. And again, if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them out to us. As always, the super chat questions actually get answered. No, they get answered first. That's a joke.
They get answered best.
Yeah, they get answered first. They get answered best. But we'll tackle any questions you guys have. Let's move to number 11, Kentucky, 6-0 on the season. Their national title hopes still clearly alive for another, what day is today? Alive for another day. They are heading to number 1, Georgia. Georgia 6-0 on the season. Georgia favored by, at last check yesterday, 22.5. I don't know if that's changed much on this one. That's a 3:30 CBS kick, and that line is a lot to me. I am going to watch this game, and we'll see how long Kentucky can stay in it. Georgia's offense is, it's up and down, and we'll see. Like, the lack of offense may keep Kentucky in this. And what does in this mean? Like a 14-point deficit for the entire game, where it's like, oh, if they just score here, they're only going to need one more touchdown, and it's close enough to watch the entire time? Or is it just going to be like the Georgia Arkansas thing that was like 17-0 or 21-0 in the first 10 minutes, and it's like, well, I guess I'll watch Purdue and Iowa instead. I don't know, Kevin, where are you on this one?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what comes out of this. I think, it feels like a lot of points. It feels like a lot of points. And we do some picks on various sites, and I think, I have Georgia winning this, but I have Kentucky covering. I think that 22 is a lot, and we had something posted on our board. The College Football Nerds, who do have a great channel, they kind of talk some about the Georgia offense in terms of what happens if we get a hypothetical championship game between Ohio State and Georgia and what comes of that. One of the nerds, there are two of them, both good guys, is much more of a Stetson Bennett fan at quarterback, while the other guy is all about JT Daniels. I'm not sold on Bennett, but I do agree with some of the things that were said in terms of he's quicker in making his decisions. I don't think he's got a great deep pass, but I think that in like the closer levels, I think he makes some good decisions there. But I don't think that there is dynamic with Bennett in there. I really don't. So it's going to be a matter of what Zeus White and the running game are going to be able to do against Kentucky. I've been one that's, I mean, I turn and look and seeing Kentucky still ranked and still, winning games, is a shock to me. I just, I guess that this ain't your father's Kentucky team, but that's where I'm living. I still think that Kentucky is supposed to be 3-9. So with where they're at right now, I think Kentucky will surprise some people, will stay relatively close, but this Georgia team is rolling and, really may not run into any real competition until the SEC championship game.
And let's look through Kentucky's wins because they're not all that. 7-point win over Missouri, a 5-point win over Chattanooga, 6-point win at Kentucky at South Carolina, a 3-point or 7-point win at home to Florida, and then the 21-point win over LSU last week. So nothing outstanding there. They've done what they've needed to do. They're going to be. I'm interested in Tom. This is going to be my first chance to watch Georgia since the Clemson game. So I'll be interested to see how they look. And while I'm watching that, I'm going to be piecing together in my mind how does this match up against Ohio State and see where we go from there.
Yeah, this is going to be at least an interesting game. It should be at least a somewhat competitive game. You look at Georgia, it's like, oh, they're going to play Clemson and they're going to play an SEC schedule. Wow, certainly they'll be tested all year. And it's like, well, actually, not really. Like Clemson turns out that they're not very good, and the SEC East this year is just kind of like, it's like Florida's like okay, and Kentucky's like basically Michigan State to me. Like they're a good team. They're a nice all around team. If they play a good, an actual good team, they're going to get destroyed, and it feels like they're going to get destroyed this weekend. Now, will they get destroyed by 22 points? I don't know that, but it doesn't feel like there's a chance that Kentucky is competitive in this game for 4 quarters. It might be the hanging around kind of thing, but this feels like if Kentucky's down 14 points at any point, they're done, because there's no way I don't think they're dynamic enough on offense to come back against this kind of defense when they're in a spot where they have to be a little bit predictable. I don't see that happening. So, of course the dream scenario here, of course, is that Kentucky beats Georgia, and Kentucky goes to the SEC championship game, runs the table, goes to the SEC championship game, loses to a 1-loss Alabama. You have a 1-loss Alabama, SEC champion. You have a 1-loss Kentucky. You have a 1-loss Georgia. 3 SEC teams in the college football playoff. Who says no?
It's funny you mentioned that. I wrote that exact same thing in the tip sheet for today, and basically I don't see it happening. But be prepared for when Gary Danielson talks about it during the show. Like if Kentucky gets out there to a 7-0 lead or whatever, like you got to start pounding the table for the SEC, and maybe he'll bring out the whiteboard and he'll show everybody's record. And these guys beat these guys. How can you keep any of them out when they've just beaten each other? And maybe at that point he'll be like, we should just have a 3-team playoff. And then I wouldn't put it past him.
Yakov in the comments says, don't forget SMU 6-0. They may still have something to say in the national picture. I mean, the way they have something to say in the national picture is they're going to have to play Cincinnati at some point. So if they run the table and beat Cincinnati, then, you can have that conversation, because they beat TCU earlier in the year. I'll have to look up and see if they beat anyone else out of conference, but I don't think
they play
beat
a Pac-12 team.
That's a great question.
As we all look.
The answer is they beat TCU. No. Barely beat Louisiana Tech on the road, beat TCU, beat USF, who's terrible, barely beat Navy, who is not very good. Off this week, they still have Tulane. They're still at Houston or at Memphis, home for UCF, at Cincinnati. Like that feels like a team that is unbeaten halfway through the season because of who they've played and who is still left on the schedule. Like, the fact that all the Big Ten East teams that are in the top 10 haven't played each other at all. Like that I think tells me, that they're not all going to finish in the top 10. I think that's how SMU is. Like they have a bunch of challenging games left, and I don't completely buy in on them yet.
And just to quickly answer Robert's question, the tip sheet is not done yet. It'll be posted later today, hopefully before a game actually happens. So look for that at BuckeyeScoop.com. Let's move to the biggest game in the Big Ten, maybe this week. I don't know. Maybe Purdue at Iowa. Number 2, Iowa, legitimately the second best team in the country. I don't think anybody would argue that. Certainly would be a 7 to 10 point favorite against Tom, please put your hand down. You're distracting me. 7 to 10 point favorite against Alabama, probably anybody else in the country as well. Number 2, Iowa, undoubtedly the second best team in the country. Maybe perhaps the best team. I don't know. I'm sure we can find out more about them as they play Purdue this week. Only an 11.5 point favorite against Purdue, but hey, the Boilers are sneaky. They've had some success against Iowa, as have many teams. But nobody has had success against Iowa this year, except for all of the teams that almost beat them, which is quite a few. But I'm thinking like, Kevin, the over-under for interceptions by Iowa this week is 3.5, because Purdue's going to throw the ball a bunch, and it's actually 2.5. That's a better bet. How many of these can Iowa capitalize on? It's like if teams would just take care of the ball and win 10-7 against Iowa, just don't give the ball to Iowa at your own 20. Don't just protect the football, and nobody can do that yet for whatever reason. I think Purdue can win this if they don't throw any interceptions. If they don't turn the ball over, I'm taking Purdue. That being said, they're going to turn the ball over, so I'm going to take Iowa. But let's see how things go here for Iowa and for Purdue, because I think Jeff Brown can put a game plan together to move the ball. Iowa suffered some injuries, so we'll see how that affects their defense there at corner. And just protect the ball and win, but nobody can do that against Iowa.
Yeah, and Gordon Ramsay could put together a recipe. It doesn't mean that us three clowns are going to be able. Well, I can. I'm a fantastic cook, but it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to cook it. I mean, I don't care how great the game plan is. The Jimmies and Joes at Purdue are not there. They're just it's not a very deep team. It's not a very dynamic team. They just are not athletic. It's just not a very good team, and that's not. I've always been one to say, don't be critical of the kids, but the team as a whole is just not very good. And while I don't believe that Iowa is the number 2 team in the country by any stretch of the imagination. I would have taken the over at 3.5 interceptions, before you move the line down to 2.5 intersections, because I think Purdue is going to turn it over frequently, and Purdue can't run. Purdue can't run the ball at all. So this is going to be 55 pass attempts in this game. So, if they throw a pick out of every 11 attempts, I'm looking at 5 picks right there. So, I mean, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. I don't think the line's big enough, and I think that Iowa now, by being, rightfully or wrongfully put in its position in the polls, knows that they need to sit there and to try and, keep people at bay, needs to come out there and execute and maybe get some style points. So I think that any chance of Purdue having a 0 turnover game, I think that's pretty slim. Of course, we may reload this show next week, either from our home studios or on location in Bloomington, and be like, well, and now we know.
Purdue has scored the exact same number of points each of the last 3 weeks. Do you know how many points that is?
27.
No. You are only slightly over double the correct number of points that they have scored in each of the last 3 weeks. At Notre Dame, lost 27-13. Home for Illinois, won 13-9. At home for Minnesota, lost 20-13. So yeah, I'm sure facing a good Iowa defense, I'm sure this is going to go great. This is going to go really, really well. It's, as long as they can hold Iowa to 4 points or less, I think I give them at least a 50-50 chance of winning the game, at least.
But you agree, if they don't turn the ball over, they win.
I think this is one of these, if they turn off gravity for the game, I think they've got to get, like, I can say whatever I want. Yeah, I think if they don't turn the ball over, I think they're going to win by 700 points, because it's like, well, yeah, I can say anything, because I will never be disproven, because there's no possible way Purdue doesn't turn the ball over against Iowa. So.
I spit in the face of your opinion, Tony. That's what I just heard right there. I spit in the face of your.
I guarantee.
I miss doing these. I miss doing these shows in person, so I actually can literally spit in his face. It's not the same doing these virtually. I got to tell you.
Super chat. Just ask for it. Let's move to the next one. The number 5 Alabama 5-1 on the season at Mississippi State 3-2. Another upset to watch. Alabama favored by 17, coming off the loss last week. Probably a bit angry, but that's how Nick Saban operates. A bit angry. This one, let's see what Mike Leach has. Let's see what the Bulldogs have. I think there's some possibilities there, as long as Alabama isn't like super, Tom, please, super focused and angry, which I'm sure they will be. But this feels like you get your hopes up. You're like, maybe we'll see another crazy Saturday night game, and then Alabama is like, oh no, they brought both machetes. Now they've got 4 arms, and those arms also have machetes, and they're just chopping people up.
The dogs or the bees, or the dogs, the bees in their mouths, and when they bark, they shoot bees at you.
Yeah, so here's how this is going to go. Alabama is like, this is the week after game where Alabama just typically turns into like a fire-breathing dragon. And they're playing a team that is coached by a guy who's an offensive guru who hasn't changed anything in his offense and just steadfastly refuses to change anything in his offense. So he's really predictable, which, guess what's going to happen when you're playing a Nick Saban defense? Probably nothing good. Probably not much of anything at all. So yes, give me Alabama minus 17. Give me Alabama minus 20. Give me Alabama minus 24. Like, you tell me how many points you want me to. I mean, like, if Alabama loses this game, or this game is even like close into the fourth quarter, that's going to be a massive red flag to me. I don't see this at all. Like, this seems like Alabama should come out and win this one 38-10. Like, and maybe more than that, but like something in the neighborhood of 38-10 sounds about right. Like 17 points is not nearly enough here.
Let me pause everything right now, because I saw, Kevin, you threw a comment up there about you seem to be having more fun working with me and Tom. There's an issue with the preposition there. It should be now working for Tony and Tom. So just wanted to correct you there, Joshua Hunt.
Hold on a second. I'm looking for. All right, Tom. Tony is muted now. So
I gotta put a super chat in there for that one, Tony. That was good. $5,000, Tony. Good job.
Thank you. I will put that to good use. The one thing that I wanted to mention, and then I'll go to you, Kevin. Mississippi State has done something that Alabama couldn't do. They won in College Station. Now they had won in College Station 2 weeks ago. They had a week off last week. They're rested. They can do that. They know they're better than Alabama. Alabama knows it too, clearly. So let's see what happens. Kevin.
Well, I thought you said you were going to Tom first and then Kevin.
Oh,
but
no, he said you. No, you said you.
I'm still working on a comeback for that.
Hey, and call him sir, please. Goodness.
Yeah. How much longer do you want to work for us, Kevin? At this rate, it's not going to be much longer.
Sir Hines of Ketchup. Yes.
Back to the question. I think that the Mississippi State faced a different A&M team at that point. Ohio State was a very different team the first couple weeks of the season than it is now, and I think that A&M is a very different team right now than what we saw earlier in the season. Of course, this is when Sir Tony of A-holeness will tell me that but they played them last week. I don't know when it was. But the team that I watched beat Alabama was not like any other A&M team that I've seen play this year. So, I just think that Alabama is going to come out and just do horrible, horrible Oz things, and I mean HBO, not Wizard of, to them. It's gonna be bad.
I think the Wizard of Oz things are bad enough. I mean, flying monkeys, for crying out loud.
Drop a house on them. I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. This is a Mississippi State program that adopts the ideal of the coach, and that's a soft kind of coach. And so Alabama, I think, is just going to drop a house on them. The last game that I have here could also be another upset special to keep an eye on. TCU at Oklahoma. TCU has not looked good this season. They're 3-2. That's a winning record by most accounts. Oklahoma has not looked great. They are undefeated. Spencer Rattler got benched. Lincoln Riley finally listened to the fan base and said, "You know what, guys? I think you're right." And he benched Spencer Rattler, brought in true freshman Caleb Williams, and he went off and, I think he had like a 66-yard touchdown run, had a couple of bombs, played well enough. So, Oklahoma, 13.5-point favorite. I think we all expect them to win. But do we now see is this what the real Oklahoma team is going to be moving forward? And I guess we have to see what that is, because you can't judge a Texas game for Oklahoma. Let's see a little bit more evidence. And yes, all Big 12 games are kind of similar in terms of the competition, but let's see the freshman quarterback do it again and do it consistently. I always say, like, a true freshman quarterback is guaranteed to lose you one game a year, but if he only starts half the season, maybe there's fewer opportunities to lose a game. So maybe that doesn't apply here. But Tom?
Yeah, this just feels like everyone in the Big 12 had their chance to beat Oklahoma in the first half of the season. Like, it was right there, and it was there for the taking week after week after week, and no one sealed the deal. And now Oklahoma has fixed the problem that has been haunting them all season, and now they have probably missed their chance. And maybe someone gets them in the back half. I can't. I'm not betting them to Oklahoma goes 12-0 in the regular season here, but this is probably not the week it's going to happen. The Tech team has faced 4 FBS teams this year. 4. Defensive wizard Gary Patterson and the TCU Horned Frogs have faced 4 FBS teams this year. Who wants to tell me the minimum number of points they've given up to the 4 FBS teams they've played?
Kevin?
That's not a number. That's a name. 11? I don't know.
31. 31 points. They gave up 31 to Texas Tech last week in a win. That's the fewest points they've given up to an FCS team this year. 32 to Texas, 42 to SMU, 32 to a not very good Cal team. Like, this feels like this might be it for Gary Patterson. Like, this might just kind of be the end of things. And if Oklahoma maybe, and Oklahoma has not solved all of their problems. I'm not sold on that offensive line. The skill talent is not quite what it has been in the past in some ways, but it feels like Caleb Williams maybe solves one of their big issues there. And so I feel like teams may have kind of missed their window to beat Oklahoma, which is, it's a little disappointing because it feels also like, they're like Prairie Notre Dame, where it's like, golly, whatever is going to happen when Oklahoma goes to the college football playoff this year, it could be anything. They could lose by a lot. They could lose by slightly less than a lot. The game could be over 3 minutes in, or the game could be over 17 minutes in. It is going to be a wild and unpredictable event. So, yeah, I'm hoping someone gets them, because I'm ready for someone else. Like, I would much rather watch Cincinnati go into the playoff and lose by 30 points rather than another Oklahoma loses by, like, I've seen that movie so many times. I don't need to see that movie again.
Well, the good news is that TCU now knows to prepare for the good quarterback and not the overrated quarterback. So, that was the problem. Texas prepared for Spencer Rattler and then obviously didn't prepare for competent offense. And once competent offense showed up, they just kind of gacked. But I do think that TCU is in for a world of hurt. It needs to be. I think Oklahoma drops one along the way, but it's got to be a team that's playing better than TCU. I think Gary Patterson, just his time there in Fort Worth with the Horned Frogs, I don't think it's near the end of the line, because honestly, it's just become like he's synonymous there. And I understand that this is a business and everything else, but how do you get rid of the guy that really has made you into whatever it is that you are? Then again, I don't put anything past anybody at this point, but this isn't going to be the week that Oklahoma falls, in my opinion, but it's coming. It's coming.
What did you guys let's talk about the the Oklahoma Student newspaper,
Mm.
watching practice from a campus building, a public building, and watching a closed practice, and then writing about it, because I see all of these people on Twitter applauding them. Yeah, way to be enterprising. Good job. And I'm thinking, if we did that, uh, that things would be in trouble. And Lincoln Riley shut down all media availabilities for the week because of this, or one of that being the reason assumed. But if somebody on the beat goes and does this, and then all of our availability gets shut down, I'm I'm not happy with that. And I see a bunch of people saying good job, and I'm like, I don't know that that's actually a good job.
Well, I mean, the Oklahoma of all teams is probably not the program to get too snippy about people illegally watching practice, because they had Barry Switzer did a thing where he had a guy sneak into Darrell K. Royal Stadium, and which is where Texas used to practice at their stadium. This is when Fred Akers was the coach at Texas. And Oklahoma had a guy go in there and pretend to be on the painting crew, and he would be, he was like painting the stadium, and he was just watching practice. And so during the game that week, Texas ran a fake punt or something that they had never run before, and the Oklahoma players were calling it out before the play. So then, years later, I think Switzer finally admitted that yes, in fact, he had done that. So, I mean, I'm not sure this is Oklahoma necessarily is the program to really get salty about that. I did like the very best response that I saw to this whole thing was from @IdiotSandwich on Twitter with 2 T's on an idiot. In fairness, if your name is Lincoln, you have to be extra careful of who's watching the balcony, who's on the balcony while you're watching the play. I mean, I have nothing to add that is either relevant or true.
That would be Idiot T Sandwich. I mean, his middle name obviously is T. That's they should have shut down Twitter for the day, because that probably won the internet. That was pretty good.
That was the one where I got the notification from Twitter. We're testing downvoting on replies, and I just quote tweeted it and said, "This is not the reply to test downvoting on." Nope.
No. Nope. Yeah, if some kid with a lantern was on top of the Fawcett Center using high-powered binoculars and cost us our access, Ohio State's enrollment would be down by 1. I can assure you of that. I mean, whether or not the school got them or we got them, and I mean that in the most innocent of terms, people, most innocent of terms, it would not be pretty. So it's really easy for some of these, national talking heads to say, that's great journalisming or whatever. But for those of us who are on a beat, who have a job to do, no, don't do that. Stop it. I mean, look, I guess according to the report that I saw through Reddit, that they'd also reached out to Rattler's dad. I know we would receive a phone call if we would have reached out to Kyle McCord's dad, and if there was a similar situation. But I think that the snooping in terms of the practice, I think that's the thing that I have the bigger issue with, because there are a lot of jobs that we have, and we all kind of agree to live by a certain set of rules. And when people deviate from that, that certainly creates some issues for everybody involved. So I'll leave it at that.
I want to answer Sam Maloney's question, and we can get to some other questions before we wind things down. He said that Ohio State is like 110th or so, 109th in plays allowed of 10 yards or more from scrimmage, and that's true. The good news is in October games, the 2 games, they're up to 63rd. So defense is getting better. Why are they giving up so many 10-yard plays? I think for one, they've been leading a lot of their games, and so you play some prevent, and you let some guys move the ball, and you try not to give up big plays. But also, it's kind of what their defense is anyway, where there's some bend and please don't break associated with it. But defense is getting better. It's getting more aggressive, and so I would assume they will continue to climb. But also, if they're going to be up by 5 touchdowns every week, they're going to continue to give up 10-yard plays, just because they're not trying to sack the quarterback, or you're just trying to be safe in the 3rd and 4th quarter of a game. So that's where I got on that. What is this from Jordan Kapler now, guys?
He says, when I spotted in the background of an interview that Kyle McCord had lost his black stripe, I was hoping it would destroy Tony's career. Sadly, it did not. I mean, Tony's working on that himself. I don't know if he needs that much help, really, frankly.
We're not
Just wind
supposed to
him up and give
reveal.
him time.
We're not supposed to reveal our sources on stuff, and I would certainly never reveal that Jordan Kapler was a source because then all of my credibility would go down. But no, yeah, Jordan hit me up on that one, and we went through some ways of trying to confirm it. But this is how the game is, man. You never know who's going to send you something, but you have to know the people or trust the people that you're getting information from. And even though it was Jordan, I still ended up trusting him. But of course, we didn't run with anything. I mean, by the time this all came out, it was already. I think Ohio State had already posted the video. But yes, thank you, Jordan, for the contribution and also the contribution.
And
I'll jump in.
think
I don't want to go all the way back to the questions because there were multiple and it's way back in there. But I think a lot of concern about Quinn Ewers coming in this year, bringing him early, start his clock too early in terms of his expectations of when he thinks he should be out there playing. And of course, the whole situation of who could be out. We don't necessarily start saying, well, this guy's going to leave and that guy's going to leave. But I think we're going to see a quarterback room that goes down from 4 to 3, and whether or not they bring a quarterback in terms of recruiting or through the portal to get the numbers up remains to be seen. But, I think there's a lot of concern amongst some fans that are part of our chat that Quinn may never see a snap at Ohio State for one reason or another.
I don't know that I mean, he started his clock a year early, and yes, I think you can make an argument that that's going to start not just his clock for the NFL, but also his clock in his head in terms of, well, I've already been here a year and I haven't played. That you can make an argument there. Him not taking a snap, I mean, I don't know. Even if he doesn't take a snap this year, what's the scenario? Is he leaving next year? If he's after spring, if he thinks he's third behind Stroud and whoever else is still there. I mean, say it's Stroud and McCord, and then it's Ewers. Like, is that? I don't know that he leaves then because I don't know that you're necessarily expecting to win the starting job in your first spring ball after showing up with an incumbent starter coming back. I don't. I think it would be very surprising to me if he was, if he or McCord left before spring 2023, I think, especially if Ewers left before spring 2023, because, he's at that point really only 2 years removed from his high school class. And, you have an opportunity to be the starter after CJ Stroud leaves, because CJ Stroud now is starting to look like a guy who might leave after 3 seasons. So I would be fairly surprised if Ewers left without taking a snap. I mean, yes, it started his clock early, but it also makes him more competitive for that starting job in the spring of 2023 when it could potentially be open. And so therefore you would think you would want to stick around because you're better off sticking around rather than going to, some other program and go, what, you're going to go to Texas A&M and win the starting job there, or you're going to go to TCU and win the starting job there, or LSU, maybe, but I think you're better off sticking around at Ohio State and at least until see where things stand at the end of the spring of 2023, and then make your decision at that point. But I would be very surprised if he didn't take a snap at Ohio State.
Yeah, I think he takes a snap. I think, and I said this when he made the decision, that this increases his chances of never starting a game at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Now, it just depends on for no other reason than how long does he want to stick around? When does his clock in his mind start ticking? And it shouldn't be ticking right now. And it should start next year. That's when the timing should start. But I say that now, he's going to go through, 3 months, 4 months of 5 months of this. And it's going to be like, no, I'm not going to count this time. Like, he's putting in a lot of work. So you want something out of that. Now, is he smart enough? Is he patient enough to just chalk this up to just enrolling early, and this isn't even really his year? You would hope, because it seems like a decision that took a lot of thought, and it wasn't unless it was just sheerly about the money. And then he's thinking on a whole different wavelength in terms of importance of developing as a quarterback and wanting to do this or wanting to win. And so I think it speeds up it increases, as I said, increases the chances that he's never going to play. But that's without me knowing what's actually going on in his head. And that's with also knowing and understanding that his mood could change. He's all in right now, and he could be all in for the foreseeable future. But at some point, the nature of the position is I want to go play. That's what Joe Burrow did. I just want to go play. So I do think he's going to take snaps at Ohio State. I don't think he's leaving after this year by any means. I think you came in this early so that you could compete for the job with C.J. Stroud and Kyle McCord and Jack Miller next year. That's why you came in this year. The people who talked about he's going to come in and he's going to compete for the job and look out, Jack Miller, look out, Kyle McCord. I mean, come on. So he's going to come in early now. That way he has some experience in terms of what is expected, what is practice like, build some rapport with receivers, and then compete for the job next year. Now there's I think CJ Stroud playing so well lets everybody see like, oh, CJ Stroud only has one more year after this year. So even if they don't win the job next year, they're going to have a clearer path in 2023. Now, do I expect Quinn Ewers and Kyle McCord and Jack Miller to all be here in 2023? No, but I think CJ Stroud winning the job next year doesn't mean everybody's gone either.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you sit there and say he needs to get something out of it. Well, he's getting NIL money, so I mean that's not bad for running scout teams and going through all of that and starting your collegiate experience a little early and being able to have that freedom and such. But I think that he came in with the discussion with Ryan Day and the coaching staff of saying, look, yes, we'll support whatever your decision is. Come in here for the 21 season, come in for the 22 season, but you're getting a late start. You're going to, it's going to be a steep learning curve. So, it might be best to view kind of this season as a traditional redshirt season. And then you come in 22, and then if that quarterback room thins out even by one guy, everybody moves up a little bit, and then he's still getting in there. I think what's going to be important, though, is I think that Ohio State needs to have a little bit more substance to what these guys are getting in their second and third team reps and games. Having them come out there and just student body left, student body right, putting it between the 2-1 on Evan Pryor and the 2-5 on Xavier Johnson. That's, they're not gaining a lot there. You need to let them be able to run a little bit more of the offense, even if it's to the threes, if it's to Chris Booker, if it's to guys like that. Give them that opportunity. And I understand you don't want to sit there and run it up on guys, but God, if your threes are going out there and being able to execute at a high level, that's a good problem to have. I would deal with some pretty awkward coaching meetings if my third string quarterback and my walk-on wide receiver are going out there and not looking like much drop off from Stroud to Olave or Wilson or Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, and I guess the question is how many more opportunities are you going to get to do that this year? You're probably going to get to do it against Purdue. And then beyond that, like how many games are they up by 3 touchdowns or more than 3 touchdowns on people for the rest of the season? Like Indiana, like probably not. And you're probably just that's probably just a get out of, get ahead and then get out of there kind of game with Penn State on deck. And then Penn State, you're probably not up 4 touchdowns on Penn State. And then on the road at Nebraska, there's a way they blow out Nebraska, but I don't think they're going to get that. This is not going to be 49-3 or whatever, like it's been previous trips there. And then Purdue, yes, you should be ahead of Purdue and be able to get these guys some reps, and then Michigan State, Michigan, they're probably, you're probably not, playing the threes against Michigan. So, or Michigan State. So, you've kind of missed your window on that a little bit, and they did it, they did with they got to do it a little bit against Akron, where you started with your number 2 quarterback, and so then Jack Miller got a bunch of time in the second half. but they didn't play Ewers in that game. I just bet we see Ewers for at least a couple snaps, even if it is just handoffs against Purdue. If they're up and they get a chance to play a couple guys, I bet they find a way to get him on the field at least for a couple snaps in that one, assuming they're comfortably ahead.
Yeah, I said a few weeks ago, like you let Jack or Kyle know, like, hey, if we got a chance, we're just going to let Quinn take some snaps. This doesn't mean he's moved past you in practice or anything like that, but we want to get everybody some experience, and of course they know who's repping where in practice. So I'm sure that when you tell Jack that or whatever, that okay, that's fine. As long as the players know what to expect,
Right.
and then you follow through, then things are much easier to deal with. What do we got next here?
Good one from Edward. Do you think we do a Heisman campaign for Trevion either next year or his junior year? He deserves to have a legit campaign when his time comes. I mean, to me, almost the more interesting question is this year. Like, you've got a couple potential Heisman people. I mean, C.J. Stroud, Trevion Henderson. The numbers aren't insane right now because they kind of started slow, and Stroud missed it. Stroud missed a game, and Henderson has been limited by the number of carries he's been given, but. You head into the back half of the schedule, you're going to be playing a lot of national TV games that are, big noon Saturday kind of games, or, ABC primetime kind of games, where if CJ Stroud puts up 400 yards passing against Nebraska, or Trevion Henderson puts up 220 yards and 4 touchdowns at Nebraska, like that, people are going to notice that. And you're going to have an opportunity. The Indiana game's going to get a decent amount of attention. Penn State game's going to get attention. Nebraska game's going to get attention. Michigan State, Michigan, Iowa, like these are all games that are going to be getting a lot of attention. So there is an opportunity for one of those guys. And the tricky thing is you've got 2 of them. So now which one of them is going to be the featured one and which one kind of goes ahead? I guess Stroud is the guy who is more likely to me, just because that seems like it's mostly a quarterback award, and Stroud is the one who's the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, 4 times now out of 6 games or something like that. I mean, so I guess, and his counting stats are a little ahead of where Henderson's are right now, but one or the other, I think there is a very legitimate Heisman case for one or the other of those guys if they continue to grow and continue to improve against the back half of the schedule.
Kevin, let me throw this scenario out for you. You back CJ Stroud this year. He wins it. He is the favorite next year. You back him again, wins it. The only two-time Heisman Trophy winners are Buckeyes. And then in 2023, there's no returning quarterback for the Buckeyes. So then, boom, you go straight to Trevion Henderson, who's a junior and could very well be the best player in the nation at that point. And now you've won 3 straight Heismans. Tell me where I'm wrong.
I mean, the math works. I mean, it seems foolproof there. I mean, that's an airtight. All kidding aside, we've seen Ohio State players kind of emerge midway through the season. Oh, are we going to get a campaign? Oh, we'll let it all sort itself out, and then we don't get any pancake magnets or anything like that. So, I still have some trinkets around my office of an Ed Oliver Heisman campaign. I got a really nice bobblehead out of that one. I'm not even a Heisman voter, and I still ended up with one of those. A couple other awards. I mean, I'll still get some stuff through Football Writers Association. I'm not sure that I'm expecting to see Ohio State putting together a campaign, even though if you look at a lot of the odds, I've seen C.J. Stroud 3rd behind Bryce Young, and I don't remember who was 2. Matt Corral at Ole Miss, and then I saw Stroud 3, but the gap from 2 to 3 was pretty significant in terms of the betting odds. So if Stroud comes out and lights up Indiana and then lights up Penn State, they might have to go over to Kinko's and start printing some stuff off, because Stroud might force their hand. And I think the worst thing would be them not doing anything there. You can't, hell, we're talking about a school that tried to trademark the word "the." You can sit there and put out a couple leaflets on your quarterback and your running back.
Let me just counter that by saying Ohio State has had they've crunched the budget a little bit and shrunk it a little. They no longer give us transcripts from midweek interview sessions, and they didn't last year either. If they if they can find money for some silly Heisman campaign and we don't get transcripts of interview sessions, I'm going to go ballistic. Because first, you need to service the greater good, not just be selfish about one person. There's no I in team, but there is in transcript.
I like the fact that Kevin is sending people to Kinko's and having them print off leaflets, like, fair play for Cuba leaflets, like, congratulations, you're old. You're referencing, yeah. Well, go down to the old five and dime and print off some
mimeograph,
leaflets.
The ones that we used to get in elementary school that were like the blue whatever,
Purple?
and you would
Yeah,
sniff
the
them and
purple,
you would
yeah.
try to get high off of that. I mean, so I heard.
And after Kinko's, see what's out. What's the latest releases over at Blockbuster?
Go over and get over something at the soda counter at Woolworths. Joshua Hunt wants to know: does the emergence of Steel Chambers affect Al Washington's coaching reputation? Now, that's an interesting one. Now, because here's what I'm going to tell you why this is interesting to me, and then I'm going to let you guys decide which one it is, because I don't want to decide. So, is it good in that he has, gone from 0 to 60 very quickly and is immediately turned into a dynamic player, or is it bad in that he's had all these other guys for years and none of them have developed into the same kind of player that Steel Chambers is, seemingly turning into? So you could read that question two different ways. So which way do you interpret that? Is this remarkable development on a very short term by Al Washington, or is this, the other guys have not developed enough that, a guy can just walk in the room and immediately be like getting major minutes 2 months later?
Let me throw this one out there before we go to Kevin, because Tom, you're talking and it's making me think about my Jim Harbaugh quarterback theory, in that the longer a quarterback is around Jim Harbaugh, the worse he gets. Is this now an Al Washington Steel Chambers theory, that because Steel Chambers hasn't been around Al Washington long enough, he's outstanding? I don't think that is the answer. We'll find out next year if Steel Chambers is now like, gosh, why is the Steel Chambers as good as he was last year? And it's like, well, let me tell you about a theory I have. So I think that's a good question. I do think
you have Pete Werner and guys like that who would be counterfactuals there. So yeah, I think
sure.
he's safe in the Harbaugh zone,
as we all should be.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I think that, to get to the question, I punched up Tony's camera so I wouldn't have to answer it first, but he definitely filibustered there. So let me punch up his camera again. No, I think that it's a case of, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of that Steel Chambers. I watched him play in high school. I talked to him as an uncommitted recruit. I always felt his better position was going to be at linebacker. And, he comes in and he has a lot of natural skills, but on the flip side, what's up with all these guys that have been in the program 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? I mean, I guess anybody that's been in the program 4 years outside of Taraja Mitchell is left now at this point mid-season, but I don't know if we can just sit there and say that this is something that just all of a sudden says, look, see this development, or is it more of an indictment of saying they don't even know what they got? They don't even know what they have there. And, a guy that was playing running back 6 months ago now is, probably certainly one of their best linebackers. I mean, could you argue that he should be in the top two when Ohio State runs a 4.25?
Yeah, you can definitely argue that. I would say that in terms of they don't even know what they've got. I think they always knew, but you leave it up to the player, and that's what Ryan Day has done. Leave it up to the player. We'll tell them, hey, we'd like you over at linebacker if you'd like to come, but it's your decision. And it took Steel Chambers a while to come to that decision. So I think everybody is innocent here. And sometimes natural players are just going to play naturally and make everybody look good. And I think that's what Steel Chambers is doing now. And he will tell you he's still learning. So I can't wait to see what he's going to look like next year. In theory, he's still just a redshirt freshman because of last year's free year, rather than a redshirt sophomore who could also technically leave for the NFL if he wanted to after this year. That's not going to happen, but there's still time with him. And next year you would assume it's just going to be him. Will Taraja Mitchell come back with that free year? Who knows? But again, I think I've said this before on the show. It's kind of an Antonio Pittman, Beanie Wells type of thing, where they're even right now, but they might not be even next year, where it's And they weren't even when it was Pittman and Beanie Wells, because Pittman kind of knew that it was going to be Beanie Wells' show, I think, and next year could be the Steel Chambers show. So Taraji Mitchell will have a fight on his hands if he comes back, and may have a fight on his hands this year. So
Mecca Hanna, not to change the subject, but he wants to know if Chris Olave breaks David Boston's record, and if so, by how much?
Which are we talking yardage in a season record, which is 1,400 and some? I don't think that happens this year. Are we talking total yardage? Are we talking touchdowns? All of them? I think
probably just all of them.
All of them.
I don't know.
I think he will, and I would have to look because he keeps climbing up each week. Like every game, it's like, oh, Chris Olave has just passed Chris Carter. Chris Olave has just done this. Being around for 4 years helps for sure, but that first year was only like 14 catches for like 140 yards or whatever. So, and David Boston was a 3-year guy. I just think it's going to be really hard because David Boston had like a 980-yard season and a 1,400-yard season, and then his freshman year was like a 300-yard season. And Olave hasn't done any. Like he had a 780 something like that last year as and then a similar season the year before. All of the numbers run together, but I don't know. What, Tom, is he going to get there? Because I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of
I pulled up the record. Yeah, I pulled up the record. So pass reception yards in a season is a David Boston record. That's 1,435. He has a bunch of pass reception in the game records, 14. Mm-hmm. He had 14 receptions against Penn State in 1997. That was a crazy game. And then, yards per career is not his, so it wouldn't be him. Touchdown receptions in a season is not his. Touchdown receptions in a career is David Boston. That's 34. And what is Olave at right now? Olave entered with 22 this year. So
is it 29 or something?
He has bringing it up.
He entered the year with 22. He now
so he's at 29.
29. So 20. So he's only got to get 5 more to tie, 6 more to take the lead. I'd bet on him to do that. Because he's presumably less than half. If he's healthy, he's only played 6 of his 12 games. You're presuming they're going to play probably at least 8, 7 to 8 more at least, could be 9 more. I'd bet on him potentially breaking that career record. If he's at 20, what did we say, 29 now? Mm-hmm. If he's 29 now, he's only 1 behind Devin Smith for second all time. 1 more he ties Devin Smith, and then 5 more he would tie David Boston. 6 more to go ahead. If that's the record we're talking about, I would bet on him doing that. Yardage in the season 1,435. He's at right now 495. So he would have to basically triple the numbers he's got right now, which he would have to really significantly pick up the pace, and he's already averaging 82 yards per game. So is he going to average 120 yards per game the rest of the season when the weather's getting worse and you're probably leaning more on the run and the games are a little more competitive, the competition's getting a little better? Probably not. But career touchdowns, I say yes.
So he is now, because the career receiving yardage guy is Michael Jenkins, who passed David Boston way back when. Jenkins has 28.98, and Chris Olave right now is at 22.69. So you're asking him to do basically 630 yards or 660 yards, mm-hmm. 630 yards, 20 yards, something like that, over the course of the next 7 to 9 games. That's happening to me. Like he's mm-hmm. going to average 80 some yards receiving. So I think he will be the all-time reception yardage leader after this season, provided he stays healthy. And even with the throwing the ball in November and stuff, that didn't really affect Dwayne Haskins. And I see Dwayne Haskins being more along the lines of, or C.J. Stroud being more along the lines of that passing game than the passing game they had with Justin Fields. So I think it'll continue. The passing game will continue in in some rougher weather, even though obviously they'll rely on Travion Henderson more as we go. So, yeah, definitely more Olave touchdown handshakes to come and more. So, this next question: eliminate the kickoff, yes or no? Kevin, we saw Ryan Day on Tuesday say he would be in favor of eliminating kickoffs. It's the most dangerous play in the game. And I remember talking to Justin Hilliard a few years ago when this was all. I think when the first iteration of the fair catch, you can fair catch it anywhere in the 25 and in the 20, and you'll get it at the 25. He was asked about that and how it would make life safer for the returner, and isn't that great? And he just laughed because he's like, there are many more collisions on kickoffs than just what happens to the returner. Everybody going down to block is running into somebody else trying to tackle. And so there's 10 to 15 collisions ish, 5 to 10 collisions, let's say, because there's only, so many per side, but a bunch of collisions on every kickoff. And the only one people focus on is with the returner. And so he kind of laughed at that idea, but Day, for the safety of the game, for the safety of the players, is in favor of eliminating the kickoff. I know the overwhelming reaction to those tweets that I saw were against Ryan Day being against it. I like when Ohio State has a good kickoff returner because that's fun. It's part of football. But it also is so rare anymore that you could get rid of it and it wouldn't even bother me.
Yeah, I know it's the unpopular answer to sit there and say that I kind of agree with Ryan Day. We all love to say there's no more football left in my football, but we're also looking at players who, as they get bigger, faster, stronger, are having horrible qualities of life coming out of the sport. And the worst thing that could happen is that we just get ourselves into a position where we no longer have football. So if taking the kickoffs out of the equation helps prolong the sport and leads to a little bit better quality of life for these athletes, I'm not opposed to that. I do like the strategy of, some of the things that goes on in the kickoff rather than just the blanket. You're just going to get the ball on the 25. I mean, it does, it does muddy the waters a little bit for me, but again, at the end of the day, the continued participation in football means more to me than just the kickoffs. I'm sure I'm getting shouted down. I'm not reading the comments as I'm saying this. I'm getting shouted down for being soft or whatever, but I just want to protect football.
Yeah, I feel like this would be a lot less of a loss to the sport than it would have 15 years ago when kickoff returns were actually still a thing that happened. Like go back and look at how many kickoff returns Ohio State had in 2004 compared to 2019 or this season. Like it's just as soon as they put the fair catch in there, it was like, okay, this is the intermediate step where then this more or less removes it from the game in a lot of cases. And then when they actually remove it from the game, it won't seem like that big of a difference. Like that feels like that's kind of where we are right now, where it's like, okay, this has already kind of been removed from the game in a lot of cases. And now it's just going to be more removed. And, you still see kick returns. I mean, Texas A&M returned a kick last week for a touchdown against Alabama. Like you still see it from time to time, but Ohio State has now gone more than a decade since they returned a kickoff for a touchdown. So it's less of a loss to me than it would have been otherwise. And, the question then, of course, is what do you do about onside kicks? And Greg Schiano always proposed back in the day, you get it, the equivalent of 4th and 15 on the, whatever 35-yard line or whatever you want to make it. And, you have to convert a 4th and 15, which I guess he had worked out was like statistically about the same percentage chance of picking up an onside kick. And yeah, I mean, if this makes it a safer sport and improves quality of life, like, yeah, absolutely. Because to Tony's point there about, the Justin Hilliard quote about, it's not just the returner getting drilled. Eric LeGrand was not a kick returner for Rutgers. He was an offensive lineman for Rutgers, and he got paralyzed on a kick return. Like that is, that you can have pretty serious injuries on kick returns. And if we're at the point where you're still getting a lot of those injuries, but there's not nearly as much potential upside to it in terms of exciting plays and game-changing plays, then like, yeah, that kind of changes the calculus for me a little bit, that maybe it is time to move away from those.
I liked what the XFL did, the most recent XFL, not the first XFL, where the kickoff came from the 30, and then the defending team lined up at the receiver's 35-yard line. The receivers lined up at their own 30-yard line. So there's only like 5 yards separating the two, but they couldn't move until the ball passed them. So you only have 5 yards difference between you start running towards each other, and there's no, big head start or anything like that. So it was a safer way to do this. And that was one of the rules from the XFL, this most recent edition, that I thought would work. And there are some others that we've talked about in the past that I have totally forgotten, because I had to even Google what spring leagues were we even talking about in the last 2 years, and I was like the Alliance of American Football, and I don't even think they had kickoffs. They just did the 25-yard line thing.
What about the way that the XFL 1.0 started the opening kickoffs, and you just run full speed at the other guy, and nothing wrong.
Injury on the very
nothing
first
bad
play
could happen there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He can cuss me.
I agree that the XFL 2.0, I would be in favor of that, because you still have the situation where the return guy could be dealing with running into some tall trees and such, but you're not dealing with all of these other collisions, and truthfully, guys are getting locked up pretty early in the play, so you're not getting guys getting a 60-yard run on you and just flying at you.
The next one from Jeffrey Reese. Yeah, will the Big Ten take notice of the scheduling advantage of backloading the schedules for the top teams? The SEC has done this for a while, and it allows for 5 in the top 10. Now, this is, I don't think the Big Ten did this intentionally, because I did a story with the Big Ten on scheduling in like January of 2020, maybe. And it was before Buckeye Scoop started, so this was back at the Ozone. And I talked to the Big Ten about how they put their college football schedule together, and I talked to the SEC, the guy at the SEC who was in charge of that for the SEC. The Big Ten does this years and years and years in advance. The Big Ten schedules, like if you look, the Big Ten has a conference schedule through 2025, 2026, something like that right now. The SEC only does it it was like 18 months out, something like that, where it's, and they just tell you who it's going to, who's going to be on your schedule. You know that a little ways out. But then like the specific, like what week are you going to play these teams? I think that comes out like earlier in the year, if I'm not mistaken. Like it's like they have, the Big Ten prefers the security of knowing exactly what you're doing, exactly where you're going, being able to sell your tickets, that this date, 5 years from now, this team is going to be in town. The SEC goes for a much more flexible model in terms of scheduling. So, again, and that was as of January 2020. So, there may be a different, a little bit of a change in thinking in the Big Ten. Since that point, and, with new teams coming in potentially, with new teams definitely coming into the SEC in the coming years and potentially coming into the Big Ten in coming years, again, that could change. But yeah, that never made an ounce of sense to me to schedule all this stuff so far out. It's like scheduling those non-conference games 11 years out. Like, Ohio State and Georgia are playing in like 2030 and 2031 or something like that. Like, why? Schedule those games 3 years out. You don't have to have these games 10 years out. You can just, the straw man there is the Coastal Carolina BYU thing from last year, where they just kind of did like a 2 weeks notice kind of game. You don't have to do it 2 weeks notice, but you don't have to have these things scheduled 10 years out. This is being done for the convenience of administrators and not for the betterment of the sport.
Tom, I'm going to disagree with you right there, because there has been so much planning involved, fans, alumni, administration, just trying to be ready for the October 18th, 2025 game between Connecticut and Ohio State. So I will accept your apology on behalf of all of these people who are working night and day to make that game happen, sir.
The one thing I do genuinely want to know about Ohio State scheduling, and the next time we talk to Gene Smith, I may be the weirdo who asked him a completely off the wall question.
You had me at weirdo.
Are they intentionally trying to schedule teams they've never scheduled before? Because there are like 38 or 40, something like that, FBS teams that Ohio State has never played. And they have a bunch of them scheduled in the coming years. They've got Arkansas State scheduled. They've got UConn scheduled. They've crossed a couple of them off in recent years. They just knocked Tulane off the list a couple of years ago. There've been a bunch of games recently where it's like Ohio State has never played these, 40 teams. And they keep scheduling, you're only scheduling 3 non-conference games a year. And at least one of them is against a big brand name. So there's not that many other teams. And they keep scheduling these teams. So I'm wondering if that's actually an intentional thing that they're doing, that they're trying to schedule these teams they've never played before, or if that's just purely a coincidence. And I am looking forward to asking Gene Smith that and having him looking at me like, what are you talking? We just needed a game, man. Like, what are you talking about?
I hope you ask that, and I hope that is his response.
I'm gonna wait for a really, like, when he has like a really serious press conference, like someone has done something bad or very serious, and it's like, Gene, slightly off topic, UConn football. I have a question. Yes,
Gene. Enough about the massage parlor thing. I just had one quick scheduling thing. I'm talking about the previous stuff, not anything new, guys. Come on, please don't look at me like that.
that's one of those. That's one of those stories that was like, I had completely forgotten about that. That was just that like flew out of my brain 15 minutes after it happened, and I had completely forgotten about that until just now.
I'm not going to say anything else. What is this one? Gary Lewis, out of dislike for the SEC, all other Power 5 conferences should start scheduling cupcake teams in weeks 11 and 12, so there'll be no decent Power 5 matchups in week 11. Boy, I wouldn't like that. We need some games to watch and to enjoy, but also it would kind of be like, like a walkout strike where we're just going to, and make everybody take notice of the silliness and and I get tired of that. Well, they only do that in that week. No, they also have soft teams early in the year as well, Kevin.
Right. They don't call it chicken S, and I don't mean salad Saturday for nothing, but there certainly are, the Citadel can only play so many teams in week 11 or week 12. So, you're going to end up having Southeast Louisiana, Citadel, Macon Barber College. There are only so many of them that can play against these SEC opponents. It obviously has not hurt the SEC in terms of what their postseason fortunes are. I just don't like the lack of parity in terms of how college scheduling is working. Play 8, play 9 conference games. What are you doing there? Play FCS, don't play FCS. We're not doing this, and we're acting on our own. We don't care. I mean, we don't even have a consensus in the non-binding, no piece of paper alliance. I mean, there's not even uniformity when it comes to that. We need to have some sort of uniformity, and if it just takes the alliance and all 3 conferences there at least saying, okay, we're going to do 8 in FCS, fine, but everybody needs to get on the same page.
Yeah, I would like to see it go, everybody just play 8 games, conference games, because I think the alliance would then allow Ohio, the Big Ten and ACC and Pac-12 to go ahead and schedule themselves, and you don't have to load up on Power 5 teams and play 12 of them. You can go ahead and just cut one conference game down. The television product is still going to be there because you're replacing Nebraska with North Carolina. So it's like there's still going to be a game there to watch. So I would like everybody to be uniform with that. The SEC, they schedule for the benefit of the best programs. Mm-hmm. The Big Ten schedules in spite of them almost when it comes to the timing and when games are played.
Well, that was another difference in how they did it. The Big Ten would schedule, they basically ran computer simulations and came up with ones that were just, it was like there was not a strategic, like Ohio State and Penn State will always play in the whatever last weekend of September or whatever. They ran these computer simulations. The SEC took so many more things into consideration where, LSU and Alabama will always have a bye week before they play. And, Florida is always playing at Kentucky early in the year, so they don't have to go up there in November. Like, there's a ton of those things. The Big Ten doesn't do any of it. It's just kind of like, well, here's what the computer spat back, and in the interest of fairness, this is what we're going to do.
Always in the interest of fairness in the Big Ten. And in the interest of fairness, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a day here. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for all of the questions, contributions, and just being here so that we're not talking to ourselves. We talk to each other enough. We need to talk to other people. So that's also one of the reasons we like doing these on a Friday, and allows us to just reach out, relax a little bit, nothing too serious. And so we thank you guys for that. Make sure to continue to find us at BuckeyeScoop.com. If you're not yet a member, please join. If you are, thank you for that. And as always, you can find all of our videos, streams, podcasts, Kevin's Big Me Kickoff Podcast at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop, or you can search all of the podcasts. Just search Buckeye Scoop on your platform. You'll get a list of all of our podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe to any of those there as well. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you later.